The Galactic Assembly convened in polished brilliance under the twin suns of Varner sky, a monument to eons of order and supposed enlightenment. At the heart of this grandeur, humanity was put on trial, not in chains, but by words sharpened into weapons. Tier 1 species. They called Earth primitive, unstable, emotionally volatile. Ambassador Tail of the Zerati species delivered the verdict without hesitation, his crest pulsating with arrogance. Humans break too easily. Their history is a dirge of failure and violence. Murmurs rippled through the amphitheater, some amused, others indifferent. The human delegation stood still, not bowed, not defiant, just still, silent. Ambassador Marin Chi, a civilian cultural expert, and Commander Juno Vega, a decorated Earth military strategist, exchanged no words. They didn't need to. The Assembly believed their silence was proof of weakness. In truth, it was strategy. On the journey back to their transport, the Zerati envoy laughed. Even their pride is brittle. Weeks later, that laughter died when the plague broke out on Adon 6. The infection began subtly. Scientists noticed minor cognitive disruptions. Then came hysteria, hallucinations, and eventual catatonia. The pathogen attacked the emotional centers of non-human minds. Confederation medical teams attempted intervention, but collapsed in the process. Panic spread faster than the disease. The planet was quarantined. Entire sectors sealed off. Calls for assistance echoed unanswered, until Earth responded. No fanfare, no public declaration. Just a ship, then 3, then 12. Earth sent doctors, engineers, and soldiers into a death zone the rest of the galaxy feared. Commander Vega led the first team. In every breathless broadcast, her calm voice repeated, "We adapt." On the surface of Adon 6, chaos was absolute. Elosari minds fractured under emotional pressure. Varnian healers, once revered, curled in fetal positions. The air itself felt oppressive, but human teams operated through it. Systematically, efficiently. Where others saw a collapse, humans saw a challenge. Inside a makeshift triage center, a Zerati scientist, bleeding from a self-inflicted wound, watched a human nurse comfort a dying Elosari child. The nurse had been awake for 36 hours, her hands blistered and uniform scorched. She sang a lullaby. The scientist whispered, "Why aren't they breaking?" Dr. Marin Chi spent her hours in the deepest infected sectors, gathering data and comforting the afflicted. She shared her notes via encrypted pulses to Earth. Preliminary theory. Pathogen overwhelms higher cognitive empathy networks. Human subjects demonstrate adaptive emotional compartmentalization. Cultural norm of trauma exposure may confer resistance. Confederation leadership refused to believe it. They demanded proof. Proof came in the form of a recording leaked from Zone Theta. A human rescue unit moved through collapsed tunnels to save a Varnian brood cluster. One soldier stopped to carry a wounded stranger despite orders to evacuate. He died when the structure collapsed. The alien survived. The feed went viral across the core systems. The caption simply read, "He didn't know their names." The Confederation's analysts met in private. One Elosari researcher, trembling, reviewed human history again. She read of Earth's famines, genocides, and rebuildings. She read about Hiroshima, Chernobyl, Sarajevo, the siege of Leningrad, the Black Death. Each entry carried a common theme: suffering endured. Back on Aderon 6, Commander Vega watched as her team set up a neural stabilizer for a Zerati child whose parents had torn each other apart in panic. The child didn't speak, but she didn't scream either. She simply clung to Vega's arm. "She trusts you," the Varnian aide whispered. "She doesn't know what I am," Vega replied. "She only knows I didn't leave." The disease did not discriminate, but its impact did. Alien species fell not just because of biology, but because of fragility, the absence of a cultural mechanism for coping with loss. Humanity had lost everything 100 times, and rebuilt 100 more. At a central med station, a Zerati general accused Marin Chi of exploiting the crisis to elevate Earth status. She replied without venom, "You mistook stillness for submission. We've screamed all our lives. That's why we're quiet now." Each passing day reshaped the perception. Humans slept in 10-minute cycles and returned to duty. They sang songs while carrying body bags. They built cremation pyres for those they couldn't save and memorials for those who saved others. When alien personnel refused to re-enter collapse zones, humans went alone. One such rescue required manual stabilization of a failing reactor. A young human engineer named Axel volunteered. He wasn't a hero. He wasn't trained for sacrifice. But he crawled into that chamber and held the coolant regulator with his own hands until the failsafe reactivated. He died minutes later. The recording showed him humming while the alarm screamed. It was an old Earth tune, forgotten lyrics, remembered melody. 3 alien factions released a joint statement a morning. It was the first interspecies tribute issued to a human by name. As containment stabilized, alien leaders quietly authorized study programs into human psychological resilience. What had been considered a liability was now reframed as a possible evolutionary gift. Why had no other species evolved to endure such trauma? And why did humans not simply endure, but grow stronger from it? The answer wasn't genetic. It was historical, emotional, spiritual. Earth had broken every possible way, and in every case, had chosen to get back up. No algorithm could simulate that. On the final day of emergency operations, Vega stood before a congregation of alien survivors. She said nothing. She simply handed over a data drive, thousands of Earth case studies in recovery, rehabilitation, and rebuilding. And then she walked away. No speech, no plea, just a gesture. A Varnian historian later wrote, "They asked for nothing, but in their silence, they gave us everything we lacked." The assembly reconvened. This time, no one mocked humanity, no one laughed, and no one forgot. When the last shuttles left Adron, 6, they carried more than survivors. They carried silence, the kind that changes everything. The Confederation High Council ordered immediate review of Earth's tier status. But more telling was what happened outside official halls. Across hundreds of worlds, humans were no longer viewed as fragile. They were seen as something else entirely. Admiral Kreth of the Ruli Dominion summoned his war council. Traditionally aloof, the Ruli had never once allied with inferior species. Now he reviewed footage of Earth soldiers holding broken walls with bare hands, of Earth doctors injecting themselves to test antidotes. His council watched without comment. They do not wait for orders, Kreth said. They act as though death is no end. That is power. He motioned toward the Earth flag stitched into a soldier's torn vest. Find out who taught them that. On Jeru Prime, the prestigious Mental Conditioning Institute opened its archives to review human psychological patterns. What they found unsettled them. Earth children learned of war, famine, disaster before they reached adolescence. Not as myths, as history. Survival wasn't celebrated. It was normalized. Alien cultures raised their young to avoid pain. Earth raised theirs to endure it. A Zalorian researcher commented, "We mistook trauma for savagery, but maybe it's training." Elsewhere, Commander Juno Vega was not permitted rest. She was requested, summoned, and observed across 7 systems. On Orin's moon, she spoke at a military symposium. Her topic, resilience without victory. She began, "You think resilience is a tool. For us, it's the structure." In the back of the hall, a skeptical general whispered, "Even tools break." Vega overheard. She smiled. "Yes," she said aloud, "and then we make better tools." The story of Axel, the reactor tech who died with a hum on his lips, became a cultural phenomenon. Entire schools studied his actions, not because of sacrifice alone, but because he had no legacy, no rank, no command. He simply helped because no one else could. A statue in his image was erected on Atheron 6. The plaque read, "He did not ask what he was owed. He asked what he could hold." In orbit over Heskari, a joint training exercise was scheduled. For the first time, human Marines trained alongside Velatin shock troopers. The Velatins, twice as large and biomechanically superior, scoffed at Earth's gear. But during a mock siege, half the Velatin unit retreated under simulated gas exposure. Humans didn't. A Velatin squad leader confronted the Earth commander. "Why don't your people falter?" He replied, "Because we expect to suffer. We plan for it." The shock trooper scoffed again, but softer this time. On the diplomatic front, Dr. Marin Chi was approached by the Telluri Archive, an ancient vault of recorded cultural memory. They requested interviews, long, deep dives into what shaped Earth's mind. She gave them tapes, audio journals from medics, war songs, survivor testimonies, stories of mothers lifting debris, children crossing minefields, prisoners teaching poetry to each other with ash and blood. The Telluri archivists wept. They had lived 10,000 years and never wept. In one journal, a combat medic said, "They bombed our convoy. We dragged what was left into the drainage canal. 3 days later, we sang over the corpses, not to disrespect them, but because if we didn't sing, we'd never stop screaming." On Tel Mari Station, a poet laureate wrote a new cycle, The Quiet Flame. Every verse chronicled a human moment of uncelebrated resilience. No victories, just choices. A woman cutting her hair to boil for broth. A child offering her only blanket to a freezing stranger. It spread faster than political doctrine. Meanwhile, Commander Vega was assigned to a coalition expedition on El Carafor, where tectonic instability had collapsed entire cities underground. Half the team resigned after initial scouting. The remaining crew, a mixture of Ruli, Avenari, and a few Earth engineers, proceeded. In the dark ruins, they found survivors and monsters, mutated fauna feeding on desperation. Vega fought not with guns, but with planning, with silence. She taught alien teams how to breathe in chaos, how to move not with fear, but focus. No bravado, just action. An Avenari noble, bloodied and breathless, muttered, "You're not fearless." Vega said, "No, we're just used to walking with it." In the aftermath, Ruli Admiral Kreth formally requested Earth military advisors for integration into Dominion protocols. It marked the first time the ruler asked anything of another species. Elsewhere, civil unrest broke out on Wintari, a wealthy trade hub. The populace, isolated from war for centuries, collapsed at the first food shortage. Fires, riots, despair, and then humans arrived, not with weapons, with loaves, with water purification kits, with old engineering blueprints scrawled by hand. An elderly woman taught a class how to rebuild a hydro dam using scraps. Children listened and obeyed. The local governor, once skeptical of humans, asked her, "Why do you know these things?" She answered, "Because on Earth we had to." The turning point came not from politics, but from art. A Hesperan filmmaker released Red Soil, a Hollywood docudrama chronicling Earth's climate crisis centuries ago. It portrayed a dying Earth, but not a defeated one. Farmers growing crops in acidified soil, families huddling beneath shattered domes, cities turning into vertical gardens after oceans reclaimed the shorelines. The final line: we didn't save our world because it deserved it. We saved it because it was ours. The film won awards. But more than that, it changed policy. Alien worlds with ecological collapse sought human advisors. Earth went from Tier 1 to Tier shifted. They still weren't considered a dominant power, but something more dangerous, a necessary one. On the 100th day after Adon SXS clearance, a coalition assembly gathered to commemorate the losses. Humans were not placed at the podium. That honor went to a young Zerati girl, the same one who had once clung to Vega's arm. She wore a simple Earth uniform and recited a poem she'd memorized from Earth's ruins. Though our bones crack and our hands bleed, though fire takes the sky and stone, still we stand, though none would lead, still we call this pain our own. The chamber went silent, not out of fear, but respect. In corridors of war and halls of peace, humans were still questioned, still mistrusted by some, still underestimated by others, but never again ignored. Because somewhere in the darkest places of the galaxy, when systems fall and fires rage, a quiet message echoes. Send for the humans. They know how to survive. The galaxy did not remain silent. Whispers of humanity's trials spread like gravity waves through ancient networks. Species that had watched from afar now reevaluated. Not humanity's strength, but its staying power. A power they'd never seen and could no longer ignore. It began with the Keltari Accord. The Keltari, a deeply isolationist species known for biological perfection and cultural rigidity, rarely acknowledged other sentience. Yet after the Elkara IV recovery, they requested Earth's presence at their Harmony Summit. Ambassador Lucian Eris attended. No formal guards, no armor, just a weathered diplomat with frostbitten fingers from a rescue mission years prior. The Keltari delegation observed him with clinical fascination. "You do not fear dissolution of identity," their speaker said. Lucian replied, "We define ourselves by how we rebuild, not by what remains intact." They gave him the seat of honor. Meanwhile, in the fringe worlds, threats stirred. The Vezari hordes, nomadic scavengers who thrived in war-torn systems, mistook humanity's rising influence as bluff. They ambushed the colony world of Dairon's Reach, believing Earth's settlers would buckle quickly. But the settlers had been miners. When orbital scans showed collapsed tunnels and widespread structural failure, Vezari leaders assumed victory. Then a miner climbed from the rubble. Then 10. Then hundreds. Armed with nothing but tools and grit, they counterattacked in shifts. Not for conquest. For their children sleeping under makeshift steel blankets below. 3 Vezari warships were grounded, not by force, but by refusal. The humans simply would not retreat. One Vezari warlord later recorded, "We mistook their silence for fear. It was calculation. They waited for us to overreach, and then they buried us in the earth we claimed." This event was no anomaly. The Torash Dominion sent analysts to Earth, hoping to discover the source of human resilience. They found chaos, fragmented governments, clashing cultures, environmental scars, but also libraries and subway stations, music and ruins, volunteers planting trees through radiation storms. One Torash scholar wrote in shock, "They do not require unity to function. They build from disagreement. Their contradiction is their fuel. The Ilari matronate, long unchallenged in diplomacy, attempted to manipulate Earth into debt bond treaties. They underestimated Earth's legal thinkers. Their proposals were dissected, loopholes countered, precedents cited from both alien and Earth history. The final treaty offered full resource sharing and cultural parity. No subjugation. Matron also remarked, "They are not clever because they study others. They are clever because they study themselves." In deep space, a more personal drama unfolded. Juno Vega, now promoted a high envoy of interstellar readiness, was assigned to the Zolani Quarantine Zone, a sector plagued by biochemical plagues and psychic storms. Her task wasn't to lead troops. It was to rescue an alien research team trapped inside a decaying lab. No species volunteered. It was seen as a suicide mission. She accepted alone, wearing patchwork armor and carrying only a survival pack. Vega breached the zone. Her suit's sensors failed. Her neural relay buzzed with static. Time bent. Memory splintered. She saw old wounds relived. Regrets surfaced. Her father's death. The soldier she couldn't save. The words she never spoke. But she moved forward. When she found the team, half mad, one already dead, she didn't comfort them. She handed out meds, gave orders, duct-taped oxygen lines, then marched them out step by brutal step. The footage later aired across 16 systems. No hero speech, just Vegas saying, "Pain isn't the enemy. It's the signal. You're still alive." When the surviving researchers were asked what species they wanted leading future cross-zone rescue training, all responded, "Human." More worlds followed. On Maribel, a planet suffering atmospheric collapse, humans invented balloon shelters that rose with pressure spikes and folded with windstorms. On ancient Driss, where tradition forbade self-modification, human prosthetics became ceremonial offerings after one Earth engineer restored a boy's legs using scrap and heartbeats. Even the galactic criminal underworld noticed. The syndicates once avoided Earth space, seeing it as irrelevant. Now they treated humans with careful distance, not out of fear, but because they'd seen how humans handle loss. One smuggler explained, "You shoot a Tauran, they retreat. You shoot a human, they grab the bullet and bring it back to you." In orbit of fallen Crescia, the newly unified council convened to define what humanity meant to the galaxy. Representatives from 37 species debated definitions. Some said resilience. Others said defiance. One said faith. But it was Admiral Kreth who offered the final word. They are not strong because they conquer, nor wise because they calculate. They are remembered because they refuse to be erased. And so, Earth was not made a capital, nor given dominion, but it was marked permanently on every coalition star map. A designation, not a power, but presence. It became custom to leave an Earth stone, a simple piece of soil or metal from Earth, on new colony worlds, not as tribute, but as seed, because humans had shown the galaxy something rare, the beauty of endurance without reward. And when storms come, when stars fall, when peace shatters again, as it always does, the message is not shouted, it is remembered. Send for the humans. They know how to suffer. They know how to heal. They know how to begin again.